I mean, you could reach a point where you're like, I'm done changing. I'm not going to work on this personality trait anymore. But realistically, in order to maintain that trait, you will probably have to continue to practice some of those habits and behaviors over time. So if meditation is something that helped you reduce your neuroticism by a lot, you will probably have to continue meditating, or at least relying on some of the concepts from meditation over time in order to maintain that new personality trait, because the behaviors and the traits kind of go hand in hand.
I'm Patrick J. McGinnis, and I coined the term FOMO. That's short for fear of missing out, and it's why some people end up following the crowd when they should be blazing a trail of their own. But if you want to achieve greatness in business and life, you've got to break free. Come on, I'll show you how. This is FOMO Sapiens, where we explore how entrepreneurial thinkers find the inspiration and the courage to build exceptional lives. Welcome back to FOMO Sapiens, the show for entrepreneurial thinkers. I'm your host, Patrick J. McGinnis, and today we're diving into a conversation with Olga Khazan, the author of Me, But Better. I love that title. Olga is a staff writer for The Atlantic and the author of the book that came out a couple years ago, Weird, The Power of Being an Outsider in an Insider World. She had written everywhere, including for the New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Vox, and many other publications. Welcome to the show, Olga.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, we were just chatting in the green room, and I came up with a line I'm going to use because I love it. Because on this show, we don't just break the ice. We destroy it with this question. And the question that I'm going to ask you to answer today is, tell me something unexpected you learned about yourself that changed everything.
Something I learned about myself, actually in the course of writing my book, is that I need people more than I thought I did. I had gone through life thinking that I actually don't need any social interaction, that I just need to work all the time. And something I realized is that at times when I'm feeling down or depressed or like I just want to relax and be by myself, I actually need to connect with others.
Oh, I like that answer. It kind of, have you read that book about it, or familiar with attachment theory?
Attachment theory?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read a book about it. Why?
So there's a book that I read recently, and basically it says that people who think that independence is being on their own actually realize that being able to be dependent on people is a sign of strength. So it was just kind of an interesting way of thinking about these things, because I think being fiercely independent and self-reliant doesn't mean that you don't have people you rely on.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be a lot more fierce to actually be in community. We can get into that if you want.
Well, let's do it. Okay, so we are going to talk about your book. And the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, other than the fact that you've written all kinds of cool stuff and are just an interesting person, is that this is such a great topic because so many people, especially folks who listen to shows like this, are people who want to improve themselves. We are looking to be better. I certainly am all the time. And I wake up every day thinking I could be better today than I was yesterday, right? But actually doing that and, running experiment is a whole different animal. So let's just start there. What made you kind of embark on this journey to answer the question, can I change my personality? Where did that come from and what were you hoping for?
Yeah, so the short answer is just that I wasn't happy. Personality determines a lot of how happy we are, how successful we are, just how functional we are in day-to-day life. And I was not very. I had a very high level of the personality trait of neuroticism, which is basically depression and anxiety. And it kind of poisoned everything I did. Really good days would kind of become overshadowed by one or two annoying things that happened. I wouldn't be able to savor anything positive that happened. I would just kind of move on to worrying about the next thing. And I think I already mentioned the social isolation. I was just sort of by myself a lot, just kind of grinding through work and enduring rather than enjoying.
Okay, that's a great place to start from. So you come up with this idea and you dive into it. And in the book, you talk about the big five personality traits, right? So let's start there. Why don't you explain to us what the big five are and how they kind of show up in our lives?
Yeah. So just to briefly run through the big five, you can remember
Hmm.
them with the acronym OCEAN.
Ooh,
So openness to experiences, which is like imaginativeness and creativity, YOLO, whatever, I'm up for whatever.
that's
Uh,
me.
yeah. So C for conscientiousness, which is like being places on time, getting everything done, having a to-do list, being super organized, eating right, exercising. Extroversion, which is both being a people person, being around other people and enjoying that, but also just being really active, like having a
Mm.
lot going on in your life. Agreeableness, which is your warmth and empathy for other people and your kind of feeling that the world is an honest place. And finally, neuroticism, which is a bad thing, which again is depression and anxiety. And what you want is the opposite of that, which is called emotional stability.
Okay, I got you. Now, these big five, I guess we kind of all have it's not that you have, like all of one and none of the others, right? We all kind of have like on a level of 1 to 5, we're scoring somewhere on all of them, and probably it changes over time. Like what's the dynamics around how they show up?
Yeah, so these are all a spectrum. So you're not
Uh-huh.
necessarily like, oh, I'm not conscientious and I never will be. You probably are a little bit conscientious, otherwise you wouldn't have like figured out how to turn on this podcast. Like you are,
Mm.
most people are somewhere along the spectrum, and kind of what we're doing with personality change is sliding along those scales, right? So maybe you want to go from being in the 30th percentile of conscientiousness to the 70th or 80th percentile. And likewise, you don't necessarily want to be at the far extreme of all of them. So if you think of someone who's like a super duper conscientious person, they may almost be like a perfectionist or kind of obsessive about whatever they're doing. So you probably don't want to be like that either. And all of these traits really do change over your life based on the things that happen to you, the situations that you put yourself in, the kind of job you have, the friends you have. But also, you can actually kind of nudge yourself along and kind of change even faster through the science of personality change.
That's really cool. It's funny. I took the Myers-Briggs once when I was in school, and I got the highest score on the extrovert scale, which I mean, explains why I'm here doing this. But it is true. Like the higher you get up on something, there are trade-offs, right? Um, are we born pre-programmed in a sense genetically to score in certain ways as we think about these five, or like how does it? Is it more epigenetic or is it genetic? What's going on there?
Yeah. So our personality is partly genetically determined
Okay.
in that we get whatever, about half of our personalities from our parents, right?
Mm.
Or through our genes, which we get from our parents, but we're not going to be exactly like our parents, right? So a good way to think about this is if both of your parents are overweight. It might be more challenging for you to lose weight or to maintain like whatever weight you want than it is for someone who's both their parents are not overweight. So you kind of are your genes are kind of pulling you in one direction or another, but you still have a lot of flexibility to kind of that 50%. You have a lot of wiggle room to actually determine your own personality, which is why not everyone who has two overweight parents is themselves overweight because people have a lot of agency and individual ability to kind of shape their life the way they want it to be.
Okay, got you. So just like that with personality, if you decide, hey, I wake up one day and I'm like, I'm neurotic, I'm not open to new things, and I want to be. Um, the science then would tell us that it is possible, right? So the idea of where does this like where does it come from? Like how long have people been sort of thinking about this, and where has the science taken us to this point?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. The science of personality is rather new, I would say, as far in the scheme of things. Of course, um, since the ancient Greeks, like they were like thinking about like, oh, why are people like this, and what should we do if we want to be different? And like
Yeah.
Aristotle was kind of like pontificating about stuff, but they didn't have studies. They didn't like have undergrads sitting in classrooms where they like surveyed them or anything like that. They were just kind of speculating.
Yeah.
Um, Really what we like the science, the big five and the science that we have of personality started to emerge in the 1980s. And even the 1990s is sort of when everyone kind of coalesced on the big five traits. And then the science of personality change, which I write about in the book, really is like very, very recent. It's like since 2020, basically.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. Okay, so let's talk. Let's define that first of all, because since it's so new, probably a lot of people haven't thought about it. Like, tell us how you would define the science of personality change.
Yeah, so personality change just means behaving in a way that aligns with the kind of person you'd like to be over and over and over again until it becomes almost like a habit, or at least enjoyable, or something that comes pretty naturally to you. And then you reflect those habits back into your identity. So you start to see yourself as the kind of person who does that. So an example would be like if you never give public speeches, right? You hate public speaking, you're a huge introvert, no public speaking for you. Then you get a job that requires constant public speaking. You suddenly have to learn how to do this, and you do it over many years, and you become great at it. Suddenly you might start to think of yourself as someone who's good at public speaking because you've incorporated that information back into your identity.
I get it. So it's the process of kind of making a goal, saying I want to do this thing, and like these people do. In the beginning, you feel like you're a total imposter, and you're doing it, and it's uncomfortable, and you're like, oh my, you're just doing it because you want to do it. But over time, you actually say it's not a lie, but you're sort of telling yourself a lie, and then over time, you believe this thing, and it becomes an adopted trait of who you are and part of your whole personality. That's kind of when you reach, I guess, the stage of like, totally at the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a self-actualization in your personality change, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, you could reach a point where you're like, I'm done changing. I'm not gonna work on this personality trait anymore. But realistically, like in order to maintain that trait, you will probably have to continue to practice some of those habits and behaviors over time. So if meditation is something that helped you reduce your neuroticism by a lot, you will probably have to continue meditating, or at least relying on some of the concepts from meditation over time in order to maintain that new personality trait. Because the behaviors and the traits kind of go hand in hand. It's not like it's like less of a recipe and more of like an ongoing process.
Got it. So it's not like inside everything just changed and you're naturally that way. You just you've developed a new set of habits that allow you to do something, and you maintain those just like you maintain a healthy diet to not gain weight.
Exactly.
FOMO. Okay. So let's talk about your journey, because you did this on yourself. You're like, research is me search, or me, whatever they say. So like how did you identify your goal? And then what was the sort of the process of coming up with your plan to do this thing?
Yeah, so I wanted to increase on extroversion, decrease on neuroticism, and increase on agreeableness. And my plan for each of those was a little bit different because each trait has different kind of activities that go along with it. So for extroversion, pretty straightforward. You just have to go out and talk to people. For me, I did improv and a bunch of other things, and like closed my eyes and clicked like sign up, like put in my credit card number because I was very, very scared of doing improv. So I did a bunch of activities with others. For neuroticism, for me, it was mostly meditation and kind of an intensive meditation class that's specifically meant to reduce anxiety and depression. And then for agreeableness, it was once again a grab bag of things. I went to a conversation workshop in London. I volunteered with a homeless shelter. And I took an anger management class.
That's interesting. Wow. First of all, I find it hard to believe you're not agreeable, but I guess it's because you changed. But when you did these things, when you come, like imagine I'm going to do this tomorrow. I say, you know what? I want to change some stuff about myself. Is this a deeply internal kind of thing, figuring out what you want to achieve? Or do you think there's value to like workshopping it with the people in your life and saying, what do you perceive of me? Like, what would you would like to see different in me?
Oh my gosh. So it would take like someone so strong and vulnerable to like,
or just extroverted like me.
Like to go up to people, and be like, what do I suck at? And like, what would you like to see different? No, I mean, that's like amazing if you have the mental fortitude to do that. I would say like most people, when they've done these studies, like most people kind of know what they're like, but even before they take like a big
Okay.
5 test, they're like, I'm kind of like this, and this. And then they take the test and it's like, that's pretty much right. So you probably have a good sense of what you are already like and what you probably want to work on if you want to work on anything. So similar to like how, I don't know, like alcoholics when they hit rock bottom, like they kind of know that they should stop drinking. Like it's like kind of clear what the change is that you want to make in your life typically.
Okay, so it's not something we can find this inside of ourselves. And did you have people that were your avatars or your role models? Where you're like, I want to be outgoing like Jennifer Aniston, and I want to be agreeable like Charles Barkley. I don't know. I'm thinking of random people. Was that something that factored into your thinking, or was it more of an amorphous goal?
Yeah. So for some of them, yes. So this is actually a recommendation from the research is to find role models that kind of seem like the kind of people that you would like to be like. And in particular, a lot of people that I talk to for conscientiousness use this strategy. So one guy wanted to get better at studying in college and he had no idea how to do that. So he like looked at people who were good at studying and like did what they did. And that's like totally legitimate. That's completely fine. Personally, I have a friend who I really admire her interpersonal skills. She's very good at making friends and everybody likes her. And she's just like delightful to be around. And these are things that have never been said about me. And so I was like, oh, I should be like her in order to like have people think that about me too. And it doesn't mean that you like imitate them or like mimic them, but you kind of want to get tips on how to do that stuff from the people who are already good at it. Like this is like effective and totally like kosher.
Did you ask her for tips, or did you just kind of study her like from
I'm like taking notes on a number
nearby?
Yeah. Is this creepy? No, I asked her for tips. I was like, because so she moved to a new city at the start of the pandemic. And then I lived in the same city as the pandemic was starting. And she was like at all these like masked, safe, like happy hours and like dinners and things. And I was like sitting by myself and I was like, what the hell? Like, and so I texted her and I was like, how do you make friends so quickly? And she's like, oh, like this is what I do. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just started doing that.
Did it work?
Yes. I mean, I feel like her thing is really just a lot of outreach. Like it's a lot of like at bats and like sometimes you're doing a lot more batting than you are getting like batted at, if that makes sense. Like you're kind of like putting out a lot more than you're getting. But I mean, that's sort of how it goes.
Yeah, it is true, by the way. Like whenever somebody says to me, oh, I don't have much of a social life, I'm like, well, when's the last time you organized something? Like if you invite people, they'll invite you back. But I like this concept. I mean, the thing you kind of keyed on, which I hadn't thought about before as a specific thing to do, is to say, I want to do this thing. I want to be in a certain way. I want to be more extroverted. Let me identify people whose level of extroversion I find appealing. Maybe not Patrick level, but somebody level. And then let me go learn from them and ask them how they do it. And maybe not everything they say is going to land, but there will be tips, because this is somebody who, if you were to ask me how I manage my extroversion, like I definitely know how I do it. You know what I mean? It's like some of it's just how I've always been, but I know what makes me different than other people. And I could tell you the kinds of things that you could adopt into your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I do the same thing with conscientiousness. Like I'm just really conscientious. And a lot of times people who just are like naturally a certain way don't realize that they at some point learned strategies to do that because it benefited them in various ways. And I mean, to people who are like learning a new personality trait, it's not always obvious because they never did learn those strategies.
Yeah. It reminds me a little, we had a guy on the show, a really great doctor who studies ADHD and who himself has a very strong case of ADHD. He realized as an adult, and it had held him back in all these ways. And what he did was figured out patterns of behavior. So he always puts his keys in the same place. All these like sort of structuring things that he adopted, which has given him what he needed to be much more successful. Now he runs his own practice, all the things. So it's kind of like that. Like, what is the patterns that we can find in others and adopt into our own lives? I love that. Now, here's the thing. You just told me some successful stuff, but I have to imagine it wouldn't be that exciting a book if there weren't some flops, right? So what did you try that did not work?
Meditating in a sensory deprivation tank, which I
Okay.
really,
Sounds like my dream, but okay.
yeah, it was so uncomfortable. Like, I think like I just maybe am not meant to be like naked in a semi like public like area. Like it was clearly it was a private room and like you're locked in
Yeah.
there and it's fine. But I don't know, there was like a weird combination of like exposure, but also you're completely closed in and it was just like very unnerving. And so
Yeah.
I wasn't meditating, I was just like kind of freaking out.
Yes. That's
So
really
that's
hard.
one that I can't recommend unless you like that kind of thing, which I guess some people do.
Maybe. Okay. And what about like, I'm curious, you talk about meditation and as being very helpful from your neuroticism. And I meditate. We talk about it on the show. It's definitely been a huge tool for me to like turn down the neuroticism. And for folks who hear that and say, yeah, how? Like, why? Take us through the why on that.
Yeah, so with anxiety in particular, what I have found is that there's really a lot of getting carried away on
Mm,
um, spirals, like anxious thought spirals, basically, where you're just like one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Like, oh, if I mess this up, then this will be messed up. Why do I always mess everything up? I'm such a failure, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it just kind of keeps going and going. And kind of training your brain to return to your breath or to a mantra or whatever kind of meditation that you do, it kind of is a way of interrupting that negative cycle and allowing you to kind of train your focus and train your brain to not go down these worry spirals, because the worry spirals are not actually doing anything. They're just like retreading old ground, and they're actually like not helping you solve the problem. They're just like kind of making the problem worse. And so you really want to have the ability to almost like direct your mind to at least something neutral, like your breath. At least for me, that is kind of what it did. Is that I sometimes noticed that I personally had trouble stopping thinking negative thoughts.
FOMO. Yeah, it's one of these things like if you ever do yoga, when you go to yoga classes, the teachers always say something like, "Do you want to take this practice back out into the world?" And I always roll my eyes. But then it actually happens. When you learn how to focus and direct your thought and which you do in a class like that because it's mindfulness like for an hour, right? So it's a pretty powerful chunk of time. You can continue that into the day and it does, it's like it's kind of cheesy, but it works. And I have found since I've been meditating now for like, I don't know, 8 years or something. And you don't have to like, you don't have to become like monastic and like live in some sort of ashram. Cause it's just not practical. And, but it is crazy how it's kind of like any other practice you build up, whether it's a sport where like the more you run, it's just easier. The more you do this, it's easier when something kind of goes a little haywire. I live in New York City. I used to scream at people all the time for no reason. You know what I mean? You just like somebody's rude to you and you're like giving them the finger and telling them where to go. Now I just kind of let it go. And it is only because of the meditation. It's not like I just became a better person overnight.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and anyone who's like done yoga, I think, which is like now more common, I think, probably than
Yeah.
meditation, like how much better does your practice go if you actually take your teacher's advice and like focus on your breath and the postures and like really
Yeah.
just stay in it and try to get like that really juicy down dog, as opposed to like coming up with like whether you're going to make the lemon chicken from New York Times cooking or what you're going to do. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
there's a difference to it when you actually can focus on something.
I feel like you just were inside my head. That's like the kind of stuff that happens in my head.
Right.
I just love that it's like there's always that guy who like grunts a lot. You're
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's like this is not hit class, bro. Like
Yeah.
just stop.
He's just really in tune with his body.
I don't know. I think he's gonna break something. Anyway, all right. So I want to talk about one more concept from the book that I thought was kind of cool, which is episodic future thinking. Didn't know about that one before. Talk about that and how you use that.
Yeah. So, one of the big hurdles to people becoming more conscientious, this is like the timeliness, dutifulness kind of organized trait, is that a lot of the stuff that it takes to get there is really tedious. So it's like organizing your basement or like doing your taxes or like making a to-do list, sending a bunch of emails. Like none of this stuff is like, yay, I can't wait to go. It's not even an improv class, which is scary, but at least like fun. It's just like not even fun, which is what keeps a lot of people from being conscientious, is that there's these intermittent things are not very rewarding. So what episodic future thinking is basically just looking at what will the end goal look like in a very vivid way. So like after I send all these emails, I will get enough like I don't know, responses for my survey. And then I'm going to do the survey and write the report. And my boss will be really happy with me. And we'll all have like a pizza lunch at work because everything went well. Right. And so you're like imagining this very vivid, positive end result that is important to you, like assuming your job is important to you. And it's helping you kind of motivate you to do those like intermittent, annoying tasks. That's how a lot of people kind of power through that blah phase of conscientiousness where you're actually not having a lot of fun. It's because fun for them is like seeing that positive outcome very clearly.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think it kind of keys back into like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
And so many times it's interesting, especially with kids. You could use this with like, you have some teenager clean your room. Like, if you were to, instead of just yelling at them and expecting them to understand what the value of the exercise is, if you help them to understand what it is, they'll probably be much more bought into doing the thing that they don't want to do.
Right, right. Because when, you're looking for something later, it's a lot less frustrating if everything is organized and you know where everything is. It takes you less time. You get places on time. You have more time for fun. And that, yeah, Angela Duckworth actually told me something similar where like she doesn't like making PowerPoint presentations, but it's very important to her to be a good teacher and to teach these psychological concepts to people. So she like clicks through the PowerPoints because it's, important to her to reach that end goal.
I really like that. I think I'm typically, what I do is I give myself a rule. I'll be like, after it's done, I'm going to allow myself this luxury thing. But that is a little bit less, probably less of the way that you're describing it, I think it's like you're not bribing yourself. You're actually giving yourself a really motivational reason why you're going to undertake this action. And that feels a little bit, I don't know, feels like it would have longer positive effects.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, helpful for times when like there's no way to like reward yourself, right? Because like you're at work and there's no ice cream available, or like you can't go, for a fun like TV show or something like that after the task is done.
That's what flasks are for.
I know. Yeah. Right. It's like, that's not very conscientious, but sure.
No. Okay. One more question before we do the lightning round, which is, so folks who want to, play around with these concepts, like what are a couple things they can do every day to just experience personality change?
Yeah. So I would focus on a trait that you want to work on. Popular ones include increasing extroversion, increasing conscientiousness, or decreasing neuroticism. Those are the three that most often come up. And then I would just I would do a couple things. I would sign up for one activity that recurs regularly and that involves other people and that you don't have to plan, and sign up for that. So it can be anything. It can be a book club where you don't talk very much, but you're around other people and it's a social type setting. What you don't want to do is get into something where you're always having to plan a big gathering of people, because that can be really overwhelming and also has a tendency to not happen because everyone is so busy. So just pick something that's definitely going to happen and that you will be at with other people regularly. The other thing I would do is just take 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes for like some kind of mindfulness exercise. It doesn't have to be meditation because people get really mad when you suggest meditation.
Yeah.
But so do walking. Like you can do a walking meditation, just don't do a podcast at the same time or something. You can do a yoga meditation. You can do, there's all sorts of, there's body scans. There's a lot of different mindfulness exercises out there. And it can really be beneficial to just take a few minutes to not be like clicking through screens or clicking through tasks, and just take a second to train your mind to be focused.
I really like that. And I do agree. It's funny, like when you suggest meditation to people, people can get offended. I don't know why people take that so to heart. Like I had a teacher from school, I put something about meditating on social media. My teacher suggested that if we're meditating and not thinking of Jesus, the devil could hack our minds. And I was like, wow. And then I got a priest friend of mine. I was like, let me just take this one on head on. And he said it was all right. But people definitely go to a weird place with meditation in a way that is so different than the practice. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could think about Jesus during meditation. You could really think about anything.
You certainly can. That's called prayer. Yeah. You can think Jesus. You could think about Mary. Anyway, shall we go on to the lightning round?
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. What's a favorite quote that has stuck with you lately?
A favorite quote I would say is from my book, which is David Axelrod explaining how he balances striving for success with letting go. And it's all we can do is everything we can do. Just means that you can push as hard as you can, but you can't control the outcome.
That's really good. Nice job, Axe. Describes all the latest Democratic elections.
I know.
Yeah. All right. 2, favorite use case for ChatGPT.
Oh, this was kind of bad. I use it sometimes to write emails to people, like formal businessy emails where I have to just use like a certain type of language and I need to get a point across, but I have to say it really formally and like politely. I'll use ChatGPT for part of it.
There's no judgment from me. It's totally fine. If you had said I wrote my book with that, we'd have a problem.
Yeah, no.
But no, it's clearly written by a very talented writer.
Thank you.
Number 3, what's one piece of advice you give to someone who wants to do what you're doing?
Don't listen to what people have said about you in the past. Like if someone's ever said like, you're not the type to XYZ or you're not the type to blah, 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 like just completely ignore that, delete that from your mental cache. Just start all over with like 0 past stories about what you're like.
I like that. That's a really good point. Yeah, because like they don't really know.
Yeah, they don't know. What? How do they know that you wouldn't like that or you wouldn't do that?
If I listened to all the doubters when I was a kid, I wouldn't have done anything. You know what I mean? Like it's true. Okay, final question. What's the next thing you're going to change about yourself?
Ooh, I am trying to ease up on, I have a child now and I'm trying to ease up on milestone tracking and like, is he, has he waved? Has he done patty cake? Has he done like, I'm trying to become more chill about milestones.
So that's a conscientious thing. You're overly conscientious.
I'm overly way too conscientious about the milestones. I got to ease up on the milestones.
You know what the solution to that is? Go get your flask.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. The book is called Me But Better. If you want to find out more and follow Olga, you can go check out her Substack, which is Olga Khazan. It's OlgaKhazan.substack.com. Olga Khazan, author of Me But Better. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
FOMO Sapiens is recorded in New York City and can be found on YouTube at FOMO Sapiens or on your favorite podcast network. Theme music is by Mike McGinnis, editing and post-production is by Josh Elstro, and the show is produced by Matt Curtis and me. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and share it with your friends. And as always, you can find more about the show and me at FOMOSapiens.com and PatrickMcGinnis.com.